I think we're going to get started. Good afternoon, everybody. It's always tough on the last day at 3:30, but I think you guys will really like the presentation of my friend and business partner, Dan Shugar. My name is Markus Wilhelm. I'm the CEO of Strata Solar, and we are working with Dan and Nextracker for many, many years now. Have a really good relationship. They are the largest tracker company on planet Earth. They control around 30% of the global market share, and they are growing. They've just been public as a company and had a very successful IPO in very difficult times. That's a reflection of who Dan Shugar is. He has done more than 70 gigawatts of solar in his career of 35 years. He has done over 1,000 projects. There's nobody in the industry that comes even close. Everybody who knows Dan knows he's probably the greatest sales and marketing guy our industry ever had. That's why I think the presentation is going to be outstanding. I could spend the next 10 minutes telling you the background of Dan. Go on LinkedIn and look him up. You will see he was CEO and president of many companies. I think it started really at 1996. He was the president of a company, president and founder of a company called Power Light, which he then sold for very significant money to SunPower Corporation, where he spent a couple of years. Then he moved on to Solaria, which is another large, as a CEO, large solar company. He spent 3.5 years there. And then he founded Nextracker, which became really the probably biggest powerhouse in our industry when it comes to racking and overall industry leadership. Dan is in all the major industry association boards. He's a true leader. He's very inspiring. He's somebody who has supported me and our company and many others who are here, who presented over the last few days for a long time. We all look up to Dan. He's a guy who gives us inspiration, gives us confidence that this industry has a bright future. And a lot of things wouldn't be the same if Dan hadn't taken the lead over the last 10 years. Dan Shugar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thank you for everything each of you is doing to advance clean tech. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you, Professor Ganges, for inviting us and also creating this amazing, amazing conference. We're a public company, so you've all read and digested that, so we're going to move on. Well, I'd like to share with you how wonderful it is to be in North Carolina. I spent all my summers with at least a summer vacation down here. My grandfather came from Lithuania here. He and his brother, alone with $10 between them, about 110 years ago, they were refugees, and they ended up settling in Tarboro. My grandfather did. And he built an amazing family. And on Main Street in Tarboro, there was Shugar's department store. And from those humble beginnings, basically put a vibrant family together. And there's an analogy for my journey in solar, where we all were that have been working on this 35 years ago. We were very humble beginnings. I want to thank my cousin Eileen Schulman and her husband Andrew for coming and providing me this image. We used to drive all the way down from Albany, New York, where I grew up. It's a 650-mile drive every summer to be there. And yeah, my uncle Gilbert ran that store. Well, you know, I was on these river trips last summer. I did a couple trips with some very, very bright people, and I was taken back by people I respect were very pessimistic about, oh, you know, we've done a lot of damage to the environment. You know, what's going to happen? Environmental apocalypse, things like that. We're really worried about it. And there was like valid reasons for why we should be concerned. I mean, the data's there. Rising CO2, drought, record drought all around the world, incredible fires that you can't put out. I know I live in California now. Some of those fires are unbelievable. They go for months. Rising seas. And what I'll say is, you know, it's true, we have some really big challenges, but we will solve them. Okay? And we're going to walk through how and why. and why I've never been more confident in our ability. In order to do that, to solve it, there's two pillars: policy and technology. With innovation, the passion of the human spirit and the ingenuity of the people in this room and your colleagues, we're going to get this done. I'd like to share with you two of the greatest environmental success stories ever. So when I was a kid, we were really worried about the ozone hole over Antarctica, which was growing. And if you live down there, the ozone protects people from ultraviolet radiation. And it was dissipating because of refrigerants that were coming out, CFCs, that were destroying the ozone. In 1987, the Montreal Protocol was ratified to move away from those ozone-destroying CFCs. And today, these are actually, what you're looking at, those circles, those are actually pictures of the Antarctica from space that show over the last 20 years how the ozone hole is going away, and the ozone's fully recovering. Similarly, when I was a kid, we had really bad smog. This is a picture of Los Angeles in 1968 and the same area of Los Angeles today. That happened because of catalytic converters. Policy, in this case, the Clean Air Act, technology, moving forward. So how does clean tech address global warming? We've got a big problem with 38 billion tons of CO2. This is, if you dissect it by sector, it's a lot. Wow, this is a tough problem. It's all over the place. That's just the US, by the way. Okay, first of all, we need to change our language. Get rid of this doom and gloom thing. Like, oh, it's all over this, this is really bad. Yeah, it's bad. People tune out when you have doom and gloom. What we need to move forward with is focus on solutions. And solutions where everybody wins. I never talk about global warming because some people have religion on it. You're not going to change their religion. You're not going to change how they think about global warming. What we talk about are things like, hey, we're involved with technology that creates jobs, that saves money for all energy consumers, residential, commercial, industrial, furthers our energy security, protects our clean air and water, and provides benefits to landowners. And Strata has been a leader in this. Who can argue with any of those things? Doesn't matter where you live, your political affiliation, right? Everybody can rally around these things. And this is enabled because our technology's made so much amazing progress on the technology and the cost side that we can actually deliver all that stuff. Next, after we change our language and focus on solutions, we need to do what I call the iced tea formula. Innovate, focus on customers' needs and satisfaction, ferociously execute and deliver, and build a high-performance team and with a passionate culture for accomplishing the impossible and tenaciously achieve the impossible despite whatever the world throws at you. It's easy. Just remember iced tea. Okay, I'd like to share a little bit about Nextracker with you and how we've done this or done our best in scaling solar. We can always do better. As Markus mentioned, we had a significant event. Last month, we actually went public. I had the wonderful privilege of opening the market, the NASDAQ exchange. You push a button and that gets started. And this is my amazing team, our top 10% of our team. And we had people participating. We have 8 global offices, so we had people participating that couldn't be there virtually. This was Times Square in New York, and we really promoted solar and used this as an opportunity to sort of brand solar as we went forward. So this was it was the largest IPO of the year, the biggest IPO since October of last year. The market's been closed. It's been a really tough market. We had a massive oversubscription. That means that we had a certain amount of stock to sell, in our case, $500 million. We had over $10 billion of orders to buy our stock, so that's oversubscription. That's a good thing. It was a big win for Nextracker, but a really big win also for the industry, the renewable energy industry, because it shows there's a tremendous amount of capital that wants to invest in clean tech and solutions. I sat across from many, many investors, and we did many meetings. What they're really focused on is ability to perform. Over most of the IPOs that have gone out in the last 18 years have under-delivered on expectations. I'm sorry, that have gone out over the last 18 months or 2 years have underperformed. So we're really focused on doing what we say, despite unknown things that might happen down the road, and really building for resilience. And so we were very pleased to have this, but I also consider real responsibility to perform, not only for Nextracker's investors, but we as an industry need to perform together. Okay, here's a little about our company. As Markus mentioned, we have over 70 gigawatts of our solutions deployed. Just by way of calibration, the entire state of North Carolina, the peak load was actually that's ever happened. So the most amount of power that's been consumed instantaneously was 22 gigawatts. It happened on June 13th last year. So 22 gigawatts, state of North Carolina, excuse me. We've done over 70 gigawatts. So a company that I founded for $4 million 10 years ago has put enough stuff out there to power in the middle of the day 3 times what North Carolina consumes by way of this is all about, we're only limited by our imagination. Okay. And so as long as we can conceive of a big vision and then practically put one foot in front of the other, we can accomplish this. We did the IPO, as I mentioned. We have our company has a strong balance sheet, financial profile. We have 8 global offices with 550 staff. And from there, we serve the global market. We're #1 provider in North America, South America, Australia, surrounding area, Africa. And we're also very involved in the Middle East and India. And we have product lines for hardware and software and a lot of industry expertise. So the average person on our executive team has over 20 years of industry experience. Okay, so what is a tracker and why is it important? Well, nature figured this out with the sunflower a long time ago. Over the day, the sunflower faces the sun to get more energy, produces more energy. Similarly, if you don't move a solar panel, you have an output that looks like kind of like a sine wave. And if you have, if you have a tracker, you can, sorry, I'm getting a little, there we go. You can basically produce energy from earlier in the morning to late in the afternoon. So tracker is really good. It produces about 25% more energy. It lowers the levelized cost of the energy production and allows reflection on the back of the solar panels. New solar panels are what are called bifacial. They make power on the front and the back. Okay, so trackers have evolved a lot. I've been involved with trackers since the 80s. So back before that, most of the systems were stationary. So back in the late 80s and early 90s, with colleagues that are with me now at Nextracker, we commercialized the idea of tracking. We didn't invent it, but we scaled it. And we used a linked row system because that's where control technology was. When we started Nextracker, I was open to any idea as long as it's what we call independent row technology, because it provides a lot of mobility through the site, ability to get things done, and migrate through the site. And then we introduced a number of technologies that make them applicable for more sites. And through that, we created a portfolio of intellectual properties that provides value to customers. We're not doing a research project for its own good. We're advancing technology that delivers value that customers can monetize and the company can monetize so that we can build a profitable company, and keep reinvesting and scaling with our mission to make solar the #1 source of energy in the world. We're going to get that done. That's when I'm going to hang up my solar spurs. So in our case, we have 3 major buckets of intellectual property in mechanical, electronics and controls, and software. I'll go through a few of these, and then we have hundreds of patents. And basically, this is how we deliver value for customers. We have all our technologies, it's up off the ground and it's sealed. So if you have things like a flood on a site, so why is this person kayaking through a solar power system? That's not normal, okay? If you're not in the business, you don't want floods through your sites. But in this case, our system was okay. So we try to allow for, there's more extreme weather, okay? The reality is it's warmer outside, crazy stuff's happening. So you want to be able to anticipate that. We also wanted to, so I mentioned that for many years, we were doing trackers that were connected. We called those like road trackers. It works, but it impedes mobility through the site when you're doing construction or operations and maintenance. And basically, if you're in a dry place, like this photo, you need to clean the panels because they get dusty a couple times a year. If you're in a wet place, like the Southeast, you need to do vegetation management. It's really tough if there's a mechanical bar going across your system. Imagine you're in a grocery store and you need to get a box of cereal down the aisle. But the aisle is 300 feet long and you have to walk all around the perimeter of the store, which is like the size of a football field, right? So what we want to do is allow easy movement through these systems and do things to be able to like have the panels aim at each other and clean both sides and so forth. So I've spoken a little bit about the mechanical aspects, but data is like key. Both have embedded sensors and then have information that's actionable to be able to deliver more value to customers. So the way we do it is we have what we call a balanced design. And so we have this golden gear in the middle of our trackers. And by the way, these things are as long as a football field. I'll show you a video in a sec of that. And there's like what we call a torque tube that bends down. The reason it does that is it lowers the mass or the weight of the system and in the center of the rotational plane. So it's kind of like being on a swing, and it reduces the amount of power to move the tracker by an order of magnitude. And then we came up with the idea of a small solar panel on that actually drives the panel or the tracker, and it has embedded sensors in the ends of the panel so we can detect shade and do some really interesting things. And then what we do is we basically drive the system from there. There's a little controller. We designed the circuit board and the software that goes in, and then an antenna. And we are collecting data continuously of millions of these things that we fielded all around the world through a wireless mesh network system and collecting many terabytes of data each month. And then we can control with a high degree of precision the exact angle of every one of these rows and command it to deliver more energy for the customer. For example, this is a typical daily output curve of a solar power system. So here it's coming up in the morning. It looks more like a square wave because it's a tracker. You see there's some golden areas here in the early morning and late afternoon. The reason those exist is we have this adaptive tracking technology called True Capture. You can go on YouTube, just type that in. There's a 3-minute video, shows how it works. That energy, that extra energy is worth a lot to the owners of the system, especially in the late afternoon. And then during inclement weather, we optimize the angle to produce some extra power during the day with what we call diffuse tracking. And so we have a network of meteorological instruments. The tracker moves really quickly. And we've developed all this technology through an extensive measurement and verification program that's been supported by the top independent engineers in the world. And then we can do some really interesting things. So there was a new design with new solar panels where there's an electrical top half and bottom half of crystalline panels. And we commercialized a new idea called split boost. So basically in extreme angles, in like, for example, the very late afternoon, when the angle of incidence is high from the sun, we can sacrifice the bottom half of the panel to shade in order to gain a higher incidence angle in the afternoon, get more extra and squeeze more energy. And then what we did in this case is we actually uploaded the firmware and we gave it to all our customers on a complimentary basis that we're using True Capture. So we're able to future-proof these systems, come up with new features, then push them out and upload firmware without actually being on site. So these are ways we deliver value. I'm going to now get into something that's really useful here in the Southeast. There's a lot of undulating sites that move around. You don't want to go out there with bulldozers. That's bad. First of all, it adds a lot of cost to customers. Secondly, it slows down the permitting. Speaking as an environmentalist, you don't want to damage and disturb the very fragile topsoil up there. So you'd ideally like to just be able to just work with the ground as it is and have the structure deal with that. We developed this with a fantastic contractor, one of the top ones in the world, and work closely with them to get this commercialized. We have dozens of projects installed before we rolled it out to the whole industry, which we did about a year and a half ago. This is called XTR, Extreme Terrain Following Tracker. And here's how it works. This is a site in Australia.
Farm is different from any other site that we've built before due to the cultural heritage requirements on site, the environmental aspects in this area, as well as building on top of a hill with the drinking water reservoir around the outside of the perimeter of the farm. So we've had sea eagles, deer, kangaroos, and plenty of other native animals in and around the area. So we've had to work in with council and environmental groups to make sure that they've been happy with the arrangement that we've had during the build. Going for the XDR system, reduce the amount of earthworks and requirements.
XDR actually allows the site to follow the terrain with the tracker instead of overcoming the terrain by doing lots of earthworks and longer piers to actually adapt.
So the XDR system has allowed us to get a larger footprint for solar farm in the area that we were able to build on. If we weren't able to follow the contour of the land and fill in this footprint that we did, we wouldn't be able to get the same sort of output and generation of the same size solar farm or in the same area.
So with expected solar growth in Australia, not every site is going to be flat. So actually XDR will allow to use land that previously wasn't possible because it was not basically feasible or technically possible without going through huge amounts of earthworks. So XDR allows for these difficult sites to be built economically and efficiently.
But if it was a fixed tilt system, we'd lose significant generation output for the client and obviously not going to be worth the money and the investment. Reduction in the amount of earthworks required on this site is going to assist with the amount of rehab that we'll have to do. And doing rehab on the side of the hills that are leading towards the water reservoir there, it is quite difficult to try and get reseeding, rehab done, which may result in additional runoff into the water reservoir, which we want to avoid. So be able to get an excellent track record of upholding great environmental requirements, and we want to continue that going forward.
We have received a very positive response from clients. People are actually excited and keen of seeing what's all about. So we expect to see more XDR in Australia. It's an awesome system. So it'll be just great to see it out there, making everybody's life easier.
One of the things I've loved at this company is we're working all over the world, in India, in Brazil, in, of course, the US, in the Middle East, to see, and we've had all these great cultures and different ways of doing things. It's been such a strength. And our company is like unbelievably diverse, culturally, geographically. In this case, Maria, who's one of our construction managers on this site, did a fantastic job, gave us feedback to help improve the product. And the gentleman that was speaking from our customer, Bayon, is one of the top EPCs in Australia. But that actually site is very similar to a lot of East Coast sites that we have here. Okay, so one of the big things we did, we've always had a very diversified supply chain. And during the pandemic, supply chain really went off the rails. No one anticipated global logistics to like double, triple in cost in like a few months, which is essentially what happened. When that happened and we lost our ability to deliver on time for customers, I basically said, at this point in my career, we're going to plan B, a massive build out of manufacturing capacity across the United States. And working with our supply chain team, our customers, and our great suppliers and manufacturing partners, we've accomplished that. We went from less than 1 gigawatt to 25 gigawatts of annualized capacity of the most important aspects of our equipment across the United States. That's basically, we were able to accomplish that. And I'll give you a sense of one of these projects. Every project has its own inspiration. This particular site is a facility, it was a Bethlehem Steel facility operated for decades. And that particular facility had been dormant for manufacturing for many years, like probably 20 years. It's right on the Ohio River, which connects the Mississippi, so we can move things around on barges, bring in raw material or ship finished goods out. We're able to rebirth this facility and hire all local people. So instead of making product from at some faraway place and putting it in a community, we use folks in the community to build a product to support their own energy needs as we go forward. We're very appreciative to have the U.S. Department of Energy Secretary Granholm, who reports to the president, help us inaugurate this with a bunch of customers, a senior executive from U.S. Steel, and these are finished goods shipping out of this particular factory. We inaugurated this factory in Pittsburgh. We did another one in Texas. We did another one in Phoenix, and we have many other sites now that are that we've catalyzed across the United States. I've covered a range of some of the technology we've developed and just show how this works and also show how solar is not just a, California, Texas, North Carolina thing. We have solar happening everywhere. So these circles here represent Nextracker products, and the size of the circle shows how large they are. And so you can see solar's happening all across the country. And we have technology like our extreme terrain following, which is working in California, the Southeast. We have our true capture technology for diffuse light working here and in the South, and up in the North. And these technologies really help customers achieve their economic targets, no matter where we are. Okay, let's take stock. Everyone loves solar, but how cost effective is it? Okay, if you analyze it absent any subsidy, solar is the lowest cost way to generate power almost everywhere on Earth today. Now that is a staggering statement. So if you went back as recently as 12 years ago, in my prior company, we built the largest solar power system in the United States. It was at the Nellis Air Force Base. President Obama went there. And at that time, the system cost $7 a watt in that year. Today, that same system would be about $1 a watt, okay? And so the costs have come way down. Now, let's just take stock of where it is. What wholesale power is measured in dollars per megawatt hour. So solar is $28 to $41 a megawatt hour, absent any subsidy, okay? By point of comparison, a new coal plant would be $65 to $152 per megawatt hour for a new plant. Even a fully depreciated old coal plant is about $42 a megawatt hour to run, even if it's all paid for. That's why coal is dying like flies over a hot fire, okay? It's not because of environmentalists, although, and I'm an environmentalist, that we've helped push a few, but it's really the numbers don't work. 15 years ago, coal was 53% of national energy generation. Today, I believe it's under 20. And it's going to be a lot lower than that within a few years. If you think about nuclear, a new nuclear plant is $130 to $200 per megawatt hour. And this is great analysis by Lazard you can find online. So the wind's on our back, we're winning, and we're going to keep driving this forward. What we need to do is double down our efforts. If you look at last year, there's a lot of policy vectors, push for electrification, for example, of cars, cost competitiveness, decarbonization, so forth. Last year, in the whole world, solar made up half of all the new power generation installed. And we believe that trend's going to continue. So how's the US doing? Well, actually, pretty well. We reduced our carbon from 6.5 billion tons of carbon over a 10-year or 15-year period to about 5.5 billion tons. It's 20% reduction. The Inflation Reduction Act was just signed, and credible analysis shows that basically that's going to help us essentially reduce it in half from where we are today to under 3.5 billion tons. This Inflation Reduction Act, you can think of it less like a climate bill. It's really a jobs bill. And so that helps stimulate new manufacturing as we go forward. So we saw the picture of the woman that was freaked out by this climate situation. It's in these different buckets, transportation, et cetera. Well, how are we doing on these? I'm very encouraged. You know, in transportation, a huge move toward electric mobility, both in cars and other forms. Electric power, we've covered solar. Wind is really exciting. Dominion, who presented here yesterday, they're doing the first major offshore wind project in the United States. And when you go offshore, you can build the turbines really big, which provides a lot more energy. It's very exciting. And we're doing, you know, basically in transportation, a lot of the energies move from fossil electric, and then we can serve that with renewable power. In industrial applications, I'll just speak about, there's many slices here, but I'll just speak about something we're working on. You can make steel two ways with a blast furnace, which puts out 2 tons of CO2 per ton of steel produced, or with an electric arc furnace using scrap and recycled, which is 0.2 tons. It's an order of magnitude cleaner to use electric arc furnace. In the United States, 80% of the steel is made with that. And we're specifically sourcing from mills that use electric arc furnace. Order of magnitude reduction of the CO2, achievable. And, you know, many things happening in commercial industrial, you know, on a basic light bulb, incandescent bulb, 40 watts is now down to 6 watts. So there's a lot of things happening of why I'm encouraged. But really, when you come right down to it, it takes people and leadership, vision, and tenacity to make these things happen. Markus introduced me, and I'm somewhat overwhelmed by what you've created, Markus, at Strata. And and help Markus partner with Professor Ganji to help make this conference a reality. It's very inspirational. And he built a company that is one of the top companies in solar. And I want to explain why. Because they do full spectrum, where they do development, EPC, that means engineering, procurement, construction, and operations and maintenance. It's only by knowing how all the pieces fit together that you can create so much value for customers and such an amazing company. And the staff, many of whom are here with us today, have a culture about, which I saw last night at a wonderful event, about working together and service and functionality. So it's very inspirational. I appreciate your introductory comments. And yeah, I'd be pleased if you could come up and maybe help finish our presentation today. Thanks, Markus.
Thank you, Dan. This was not scripted. I had no idea this chart would be up there. I would have stopped it, but I had no chance. So this is as surprising to me as it is to you. What do we do now?
What's your perspective? Why don't we take some Q&A for a moment, and then we can go to the next step. If anyone has any questions, we'd encourage like what's on your mind. I always love Q&A because you never know what's coming. And like, don't hold back. Like, we want your like hardest stuff.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Haddix, and I have been a environmental justice attorney representing communities, low wealth communities, mostly in Eastern North Carolina for the last decade or so. And solar is actually a really promising area for low wealth communities, and especially the ones that I'm familiar with in Eastern North Carolina. And yet we have this situation here where we have a monopoly, utility monopoly, which leaves few options unless you're in a rural electric collective to actually have local benefit from solar. And I know, a lot of communities are trying to solve that problem, educating themselves and others about how to do that. But I'm just wondering if Strata, being such a leader, has suggestions for how to get over that hurdle and have more direct community benefit from solar.
Yeah. We could spend a lot of time on this question. It's an excellent question, but let me just step back. This conference was launched to actually build a foundation or a platform where legislators, industry, students could all come together and talk and communicate. Greg and I, we had a dinner more than 10 years ago, and it was really his idea. I came in and piggybacked on his concept. But, the idea was we need to educate people. Now, at this point in time, we struggled with Duke. Let's be honest about it. That is over, though. Duke has come around. They are working with the industry. There's still hiccups. The hiccups is all utilities, because utilities are there for a long time. They have their own way. They have a huge investment to protect. I don't want to make a case for them, but I understand from a pure business perspective that they cannot turn on a dime because their main objective is to provide a reliable power grid. So my opinion has always been we need to work with the utilities and with the local communities and look for a win-win. There were colleagues of mine who told me 10 years ago, we'll put the utilities out of business. And I was laughing. I said, that's never going to happen, right? But we cannot fight City Hall either. We need to find compromise. We need to communicate. We need a platform. And this conference was actually created to have that platform where we could all get together for a couple of days, talk about issues, educate each other, and create a more open mindset. And that's why I like so much about what Dan has been doing. He's constantly innovating. We need to innovate, and we need to make a case. I mean, I didn't come from the environmental side. I was in publishing most of my life, right? But for me, it was always about creating win-wins. And I think we have made a huge step over the last few years in the right direction. And we had last night an event that Dan referred to where we had 4 or 5 nation-leading utilities at the table talking to us about the future of energy generation, about storage, about hydrogen, because there's a common joint interest. And the numbers that you saw that make solar so competitive will actually do the convincing. Because if solar is the cheapest source, especially if you combine it with storage, where intermittency gets eliminated and you now have a basically base load-like structure, then, this whole thing becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But we need events like that. And you guys need to be out there. And I think we all need to push the message into the communities. We are willing to work with you. If there are local communities are interested in community solar, we can work with them. I think a lot has changed. 10 years ago, it was a battle. And today we are working together and trying to come up with solutions that benefit everyone.
Can I add very briefly? So the other thing we're doing is creating as many local manufacturing jobs as possible, creating construction jobs, and then also operations and maintenance engagement. And so there's a lot to do, but we're making a lot of progress. Thanks for your question. Another question, please. Yes.
Hey, afternoon. Jeff Chang with Urban Grid in Brookfield. And I was curious if y'all have had any success with, say, brownfield sites, floodplains. I think there's a lot of marginal land out there, and obviously permitting is getting incredibly challenging in farmland, and that used to be the MO. Moving forward, do we have enough land, and how do we make use of these marginal sites?
Markus.
I think these are all options, right? The problem with brownfields is that, they're just more expensive to develop and build on. And they have their own challenges. And at this point in time, especially with the last 2-3 years of very difficult import conditions that we had and other aspects that make it harder for us to get competitive materials from Asia, right? We see an uptrend in costs. And this is going and puts us more on the path of higher costs. So everybody wants to make a case for carbon-based fuels, right? Has a hard time if we are the lowest cost provider. And it's much better if we keep on pushing costs down. I think we need that to support the message that we have been giving to legislators, utilities commissions across the country. That being said, I'm not against it at all. It's just not scalable enough to really make it ding, and it's more expensive. So will it play a role? Yes. Should we focus on it? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's not scalable to the point where it's going to be a game changer. It's going to be an addition, and it's something we should focus on. But let's focus on driving down expenses. I think that has to be, from my viewpoint, the key message for our industry. Dan?
I think you said it perfectly. Yes, next.
With your deep knowledge and experience in the solar industry and with production, do you think there's any way that the United States is going to be able to compete making solar panels, compete with China? I know that most of them come from China. Are we going to be able to produce them in the United States with any success? Right.
Okay. Well, look, we've done that with our trackers. Why can't we do that with solar panels? So look, this is strategic stuff. This is national security level stuff. Okay. We have to start making more solar panels here. First, solar panels were invented really commercially by Bell Labs in 1954. Einstein actually predicted the photovoltaic effect. Bell Labs invented the first solar cell. There is investment happening. There's a company, First Solar, that has a very large manufacturing in the United States. Hama Q Cells has just expanded their plant. There's other people expanding now. Part of the Inflation Reduction Act, you know how I mentioned it's a Jobs Act? There's incentives to basically to onshore polysilicon production, ingot production, solar cell manufacturing, and solar panel manufacturing facilities. There's a huge movement in that direction. It's happening. It will happen. And similarly, on the energy storage side, it's happening with batteries. We have great companies like CATL is here at the conference. Jennifer is representing them, and other companies that have great technology that are looking to invest in the United States, and it's happening. So I'm very passionate about our need to increase our manufacturing base here and continue expanding overseas where we're serving other customers there.
I want to add one thing. I mean, to answer the question directly, I agree with everything Dan said. Are we price competitive with China? Absolutely not. Will we be? Not for a few years to come. We have missed the boat for the last 5-10 years. On the storage side, it is even more obvious. There's no integrated supply chain here like they have in China. I saw BYD factories 10 years ago that manufactured batteries that we still don't have over here 10 years later. They have a fully vertically integrated supply chain. Bob Blue's presentation from yesterday morning, it took him 12 years to get a permit to run a 8-mile transmission line, is a clear sign for how difficult it is to do things here. And China is one party, one rule. They make a decision and it's going to be built 6 months later. They don't wait 12 years. So this is why I thought this was such a good presentation yesterday. It shows even if you do the right thing, it might not be the right thing. You compete with other interests. We are a society that's not driven by a single vote or a single decision maker. And we will have a lot of catching up to do. It's going to take many years. The factories will come. And I think we need to absolutely do what Dan said, but we have a long uphill battle if you want to get back in the game of manufacturing.
Thanks, guys, for an informative conversation. I'm Carlo Bertani. I oversee decarbonization at Maersk in North America. a question for the Nextracker folks. Have you seen any data around habitat disruption benefits or detriments for your tracker technology versus standalone, complacent stationary solar panels?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something I've thought about for a long time, and we've done a bunch of research, and others in the industry have. The key thing is you want to minimize disruption of the landscape during the construction process. And so that's why we came up with this terrain following tracker. And yeah, there was a study published by another solar company that actually makes solar panels that showed there was for more natural habitats value to rare and endangered plant and animal species because essentially it was like an area that wasn't going to be, you didn't have vehicular traffic and so forth. It had intermittent shade and so forth. With agricultural, a lot of the agricultural areas where solar is being deployed, the nutrients in the soil are depleted, and so there's a benefit to fallowing the land. The life cycle with these projects tends to be about 25 years, which is the right amount of time to let the land come back to its natural habitat. I love it when I see dual use where they have pollinators, and a lot of these sites are, there's flowers and bees and things like that are happening. Some customers are doing dual use with low impact ranching and so forth. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity, but there's also opportunity to learn more and do more. And so that's, in a university setting, how do we have it so the landowner wins, the owner of the system wins, and so forth. I appreciate the question. I think we have time for one last question. Yes, sir.
Hey, Will, thank you both for what you've done for the industry. I think from this room and our industry, you guys have done much to lower the cost of solar, displace fossil fuels, depending on. And Dan, congratulations on the IPO.
Thank you, Will.
I'm curious how you think about the operational footprint of your companies. Still moving a lot of trucks, a lot of equipment, a lot of manufacturing. How do you think about that? And do you measure it? Do you have plans for the future and offsetting?
Sure. Well, yes. So thanks for the question. Yeah, well, we certainly measure it. And when you have logistics costs triple, we went to no measure was left unevaluated for how to increase packing density, and we were able to radically reduce it. If you look practically at what we do, our scope, the vast majority of what we do are the major structural system that supports the solar panels. So that's why we did a regional build out of over 10 factories in the United States to specifically support this market. So where you can be, half a day or a day drive from virtually any job site. And we're not putting things on containers on a faraway continent and bringing them in with diesel fuel on a big ship and then trucking them all across the United States. So we did a organic manufacturing build plan where what we did was we mapped out the market. I'll just speak to the United States for a moment. On a probabilistic looking forward time horizon of 3 to 5 years, we saw where all the projects were, and that's where we wanted to make sure we had the manufacturing. And then those communities that we're putting the systems in are also part of the building process. So I think for us, the pandemic in a way was a blessing in disguise. It disrupted the supply chain. It got us out of our comfort zone. It forced us to take a step back and reevaluate our operational strategy. And we ended up, I think, in a much stronger place. And that's better. And we are doing deep quantification of all carbon aspects of operating our business. I mentioned earlier, we're moving to the US steel, which is radically cleaner than most of the overseas steel, which uses a blast furnace. So in crisis, there's opportunity. So we just need to make considered, well-informed decisions and then move forward with a vision and confidence with high-functioning teams like Strata is to get the job done. Markus?
Very good. I have nothing to add. Maybe one thing. this is a big challenge for us, how to use solar land also for agricultural use. A couple of years ago at the conference, we spoke to that and we asked several universities to have a little study group, and we offered a $25,000 award for the university who came up with the best idea. We got 0 submissions, which made us really sad because we were happy to write that $25,000 check to the school with the best ideas. And we have done this in the past. So I can renew that offer to the students in the room. It's fun. It's a really gratifying topic. And all around the world, solar farm owners, IPPs, utilities are dealing with the challenge. How can we find additional use for solar land? And the most creative solution I've seen in China, but they had fish farms under, chicken farms under, blueberries. But, I have never seen fish farms in a solar field. It makes the landscape management a little bit easier. You don't have to cut grass. But, I'm sure there are other creative ideas out there. Again, this would be a great topic for the students here from NC State, Duke, UNC, whoever is here. If you guys want to talk to us about it, we would love you guys to work with us on some creative ideas and how we can move this topic forward.
Okay, you heard it here first. Markus is throwing the challenge down to come up with this next generation of innovation. There's a nice reward there.
Thank you, Dan. All right. So the one thing, when I called Dan 3 weeks ago and I said, you need to come to our conference. He was supposed to be in India today, and he is still flying to India tonight. He's going to Heathrow and into India and comes back 2 days later. I said, we need to still make a deal, because if we both believe in the future, let's just paper it and agree we'll do 1 gigawatt of panels together and we will sign it at the conference. So we started 3 weeks ago to work on a 1 gigawatt agreement, which, if you are a company like ours who started 15 years ago, where the first system we built has 2 panels, it was an $8,000 system, right? Today, the biggest system we have in the works is a $600 million system. So we came a long way as a company from 8,000 to 600 million, but we cannot do it without partners. So he and I said, let's make it happen. In 3 weeks at the conference, we signed the deal. And here we are, we have the paperwork. We met right after lunch. I said, are we ready to sign? He said, we're ready to sign. We're going to sign this deal now, 1 gigawatt Strata and Nextracker. We'll make it happen, right?
Thanks, Markus.